One of the biggest inflection points in our business for growth was when I fired myself from the technical aspect of doing what we do, right? The vast majority of IT shops, MSPs are, how do they say it? How's that old school term? The cobbler's shoes, right? Like, we tinker, we work on, we fix, we want to be the engineer, we are the engineer, we are the technician. And it wasn't until I took myself out of that role that our business, really started to grow. It was literally that year, I fired myself, then the next we were over $1 million. And that's a, very important inflection point for most IT business owners, right? So many of us in the industry don't get past that $1 million mark, right? That 7-figure business. And so I'm reminded yet again, through scrolling Reddit and even the Facebook groups and everywhere in the industry, the vast majority of the conversation being had is, how do I use this tool? How do I fix this? Being in that engineer mindset, that technician mindset, instead of, as they say, right, working in the business, not working on the business. And for us, now 9 years ago, one of the biggest breakthroughs for us as a business was me firing myself from the technical role. And I don't think that gets drilled enough, and it is so hard to give up. I am a driven, lazy entrepreneur, and so I looked at it from the perspective of, there's one great story that I always share was me sleeping in the server closet until 4 a.m, dealing with an outage, dealing with a server down, and getting that customer back online. And I just kind of decided, I don't want to do that work anymore. And I realized that if I kept doing that kind of work, our business would suffer, right? I am notoriously the bottleneck, and so it is often about solving the problem of me. How do I get myself out of this role, this department, this process, whatever it is, because I, as the leader and the owner, often become the bottleneck. And so it's solving that problem over and over and over again. I think the biggest step in that process is deciding, right? You have to decide as the owner, the leader of your company, that I'm no longer going to do tech work. And then find some form of a solution for that. I think the easiest one is just stop doing it and trust and believe that your team will, so to speak, pick up the slack or rise to the occasion, or however you want to look at that. I see so many of us get stuck and hung up on, well, if I had this, if we had a better level 3 guy, if, and when, and those days never come, thereby the owner stays kind of in that technical role. And so I think the biggest step is decide, and then just, shift and stop doing the tech work. It was a conscious, mindful decision after I had hired somebody who I knew could, really own and take over that role. And we had maybe at the time 5 engineers. It was really just a decision, and it was hard. It was, our engineering mindset wants to go back to the keyboard. It wants to fix. And I'll tell you, every time I even think about tickets or review them or really get into the weeds, for me and my personality, it drags me down, and it keeps me into, again, the weeds, instead of really looking at the business from a higher level, at the forest or from the clouds, or however you might say that. The single most important thing in any business is sales, is revenue. It's, growing that business, right? And so with all of your time freed up from the technical, the engineering, behind the keyboard work, right? It is, and this is, I think, again, one of the hesitations with most owners is getting out into the field, into the world, knocking on doors, smiling and dialing, so to speak, and going and getting more customers. That's a whole nother thing that you need to grow and learn to do and do good at. And it's not easy either, and that's probably a whole nother video. But probably the next best thing for every owner and entrepreneur is sales. What I often see is, kind of a stuckness or even a bit of resent, right? A business owner who is stuck, challenged, right? I'll tell you, if you really want to grow, if you want a bigger company, if you want the freedom, if you want the entrepreneurial dream that we all started our companies based on, then I think firing yourself as the technician is that next inflection point that takes your business and your team to just a whole different level that you can really appreciate. So, if you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling resent or just not like you're where you want to be, firing yourself as the engineer and moving into more of a sales and a growth mode